Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you. So a lot of tours, you're going to be spending a good bit of time between the stops just chatting with your guests. And therefore, a lot of tour guides have some built-in small talk that we plan out. Like, I always end up asking guests, where are you from? And that's mainly just to fill time. I also will ask guests like, oh, where are you staying? Have you seen anything interesting? Have you gone on a swamp tour? All sorts of things like that. But some guests, whether you want them to or not, just tell you too much. They give you too much information. One of my favorite stories of this was one night I was doing a true crime tour, taking my guests around, and this one guy really wanted to talk to me between each and every stop. Like, he would not leave me be. And he was probably upper side of 40s or 50s. He was a mediocre looking man, nothing striking. He was there with a younger guy who I originally assumed was his son, but from some of the things he said throughout the evening and some of the things that the other tour guide that was there that night, because there was another tour guide training with me that night, I think they were actually lovers, maybe? But this guy starts launching into the story as soon as I start, like, talking to him about the fact that the night before he'd been hanging out in Jackson Square with some of the guys that sleep there, and one of the girls that sleep there had tried to convince him to go back to her house with her and wanted to give him some drugs or something. And at one point, he was mentioning that he was pretty sure he was going to get roofied, and he still did cocaine with these people. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't want to know any of this. Why are you telling me this? But my favorite moment of that tour was when dude wanted to talk about, like, how he was sure they were going to rob him. And he explained it's because he's rich. And I'm sitting here like, okay, I don't care. But he pulls out his watch and asks me, how much do you think this watch is worth? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. The only watch I've ever bought was $25. But he explains that this is an $8,000 watch. And he's showing it to me on the side of the road on Bourbon Street after talking about almost getting roofied the night before. And I'm like, dude, you are a true crime story waiting to happen. Another TMI story from one of my tours. There was a lovely night that I was walking with one of my female guests, and she was talking originally to her husband, but she kept drawing me into this conversation that I had absolutely no desire to be in, where she was talking about a friend of theirs who married a Playboy bunny, and because this woman worked at specifically the Playboy Ranch out in Nevada, this guy expected that he was going to get to have sex all the time with this amazing hot girl, and because, she's a sex worker, that's her job, quite often when she got home, she didn't want to. And therefore the husband felt really put out because he felt like he had been cheated. And this story, like, it's not something I want to hear, but the really horrifying part about it was the fact that the woman was totally on the husband's side. She was talking about how this woman scammed him into marriage and now is refusing to do her duty of having sex with him. And she was telling me about how the husband had a deal with this woman that he was allowed to drug her and do whatever he wanted to her while she was asleep because she was just so tired with fighting with him over having sex when she was awake. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't want to know this story. What the hell is wrong with each and every one of you? But I've had people tell me about their sex lives on my tour. A lot of people talking about chafing because it's New Orleans and it's hot. People talk about sweat in places they should not tell me about. People talk about doing crimes, and I'm like, don't tell me about this, please. But people in general will talk to your tour guide about things that they should not tell, especially considering they should know I'm going to tell somebody else. Yeah, I'm not going to tell anyone your name. I'm not going to tell anyone any identifying features. But if you tell me a ridiculous story, I'm going to post that shit on Facebook. I just thought of another TMI story that I have to include in this video. So, specifically back when I did ghost hunts, a ghost hunt, you're mostly sitting around in a dark room with people in silence, just desperately hoping that something happens. And I will admit, even though it's counterproductive to actually having anything paranormal happen, I would often talk to the guests in a desperate attempt to make them enjoy themselves, because a lot of people don't realize how boring a ghost hunt can be. Because also, a lot of them assumed this was going to be a haunted house experience with people in mass jumping out at them. But this particular night, I was just sitting in a room talking to a couple people, and as usual, I was like making small talk about their experience in New Orleans. And this one girl tells me this amazing story about how the night before she had gotten so drunk she has no memory of how the night ended, and the only way they found any of her belongings was because she had tracking apps on her phone and her camera was in her bag, so they were able to track that down. And one of her shoes just turned up when they were walking around the French Quarter looking for it. But they found that morning sleeping in a trunk on the riverboat. And she sort of stumbles out of this riverboat at dawn, looking around bleary-eyed, no idea what town she's in, how she got there, who, she was with. She probably didn't even know who the hell she was. She was missing her shoes, her phone, her bag, and there's a security guard standing there staring at her going, "How did you get on the boat?" And she's sitting there like, "I don't know." And when she was telling me this story, I'm sitting here like, "How are you alive?" And amazingly, seemed perfectly chipper. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for listening.